Kate Mulafalcho. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot, and welcome to my guest,
Hi.
Aja RADEN. You'll all remember Aja. She was here to have a chat with me ages ago, it feels like. Can you remember how long ago? A long time ago. Aja is the
last year
best-selling author of 2 books, one of which I can't show you because I let my daughter borrow it. The Truth About Lies, All the Con Artists. It's such a good book, so much fun. And then the other one, Stoned, about gems, precious and otherwise. So if you're thinking of getting engaged or buying a diamond ring, read her book Stoned first. That'd be my advice.
Or don't.
Don't read it or don't get engaged.
No, or don't read it. Just go ahead. Buy an engagement ring. Be happy.
Well, that's true. My husband, when we got engaged, I was very, I didn't buy into any of that stuff. I was never going to get married. I was never going to get children. I have children. So now I've been married 40 plus years and have 5 kids. So never say never. But he insisted, I want to buy you a diamond ring. And I said, well, that's stupid. It's not anything I've ever, He said, if I don't do this now, I will never be able to afford to do it. Right now is the time to hit me up. Because, life, right? And he was absolutely right.
Yeah, you gotta get a house, and then kids are expensive, and
exactly. So anyway, I invited Aja specifically for the topic at hand, which I'm horrified by, and the topic is anti-Semitism. I think you'll take this the right way. I have a ton of friends who are Jewish, but they've all either died or moved away. I have nobody I can talk to about this that I feel comfortable, bringing up all these issues. When I say died, don't be horrified. Some of them were rather old.
Well, yeah, it was the way you said it. I was just like,
not
the ring. Am I going to die?
Natural causes. Happy old age. and then the others have all moved away because this is not the most welcoming of neighborhoods, of communities. So
that's happening to a lot of people in a lot of places.
Yeah. Well, the ones I'm thinking of who moved away, the parents are the ones who passed on, and their children have gone on to establish lives elsewhere because there are more opportunities. And this is not, there was a very vibrant Jewish community in my town, but it didn't have a synagogue. It didn't have a temple. They borrowed the Unitarian church for their services, and they would have a Hanukkah party every year. And we homeschooled our children, not because we're right-wing Christian fundamentalists. We thought the schools were too conservative. So we wanted to do it ourselves. And one of the things we wanted was to expose them to all sorts of cultures. And in the process of doing that, they met little friends who invited us to this Hanukkah party. And it was the best party of the year. And they had it for about 30 years, but no longer. It's all, that time has come and gone, which makes me very sad. Best klezmer band in the world, and the food. Oh my God. Anyway.
I love the phrase best klezmer band.
Pardon?
I said, I just love the phrase, best klezmer band.
Oh, so good. So much fun. Just horrifying. And so I thought of you because I knew you were Jewish, right?
I'm horrifying.
Thank you. I'm not glad you're horrified, but I'm glad I'm not imagining things, I guess.
No, you're not. Greg Olear actually had me on his podcast to talk about this because he and I are good friends, and I have been melting down in text messages for 4 years saying, I think the first time I brought it up, I said, oh my God, they're going to kill us all. And he was like, what? And I was like, Jewish people. And he was like, calm down. And the other day on his show, he said, so, my friend has been telling me for 4 years now that this is a thing, and now it's suddenly a thing. And while I appreciate the acknowledgement, of course he didn't realize it. That's if it's not directed at you, you don't see it. So, and Greg's not Jewish, but
no, Greg is Catholic.
Yeah,
former, recovered.
But you know, the old phrase, "We see fire before you see smoke." It's a real thing. So, you know, for several years now, I've just been going, "Oh my God, this is so bad. We're going to end up in death camps." And, you know, partly I'm venting, but it is so bad. And now it has become suddenly so much worse. And another thing he and I talked about was I said, and I said it a year or two ago, I said, you should be worried about this, whether you're Jewish or not, because sudden bursts of anti-Semitism always precede fascist takeovers or attempted fascist takeovers.
That's right.
They go hand in hand.
That's right. Historically, all the way back. As far back as
all the way
go.
back.
All the way
all
back.
the way back. Anytime there's going to be a regime change and it's going to go fascist,
that's the first
it
symptom.
starts with just crazy sudden anti-Semitism, and it's not just here in the US. That makes it even scarier to me. It's everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere.
Yes. So I did a little research here, and absolutely it's everywhere. There's a lot of discussion in global human rights organizations and think tanks, and they're talking about this sort of every time there's trouble in the Middle East, anti-Semitism is on the rise globally. And right now it's really bad in Europe and the Middle East. We don't even know. It's worse there than it is here. And
it's really bad in France.
Yeah, and it's getting really bad here. So, you know, we had the Charlottesville March. That wasn't the first. That was just an indication of what's been unrolling for a long time. The statistics, I mean, I'm going to do this separate video later digging into this, but just to give you a little taste for it, in the year 20 to 21, there was a 34% rise in violence, anti-Semitic violence, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Now that's in the United States. It's not globally. Globally, it's even worse. And like I said, I'll get into all the ugly details later, but it's increased, 49% in Germany. Now, I had a guest a while back who is
gotten really violent in France.
Yeah, they really, Marie Le Pen, right? They really don't like the refugees and immigrants that they have. And always, maybe you can, I don't know, I'm sure you don't have a specific answer, but I ask myself this all the time. Why are the Jewish communities always the scapegoats? Why? What is that?
I mean, I do have an answer. I don't know if it's true. It's my opinion. You just said in France, they don't like the refugees. They don't like the immigrants. First of all, that's not unique to France. That's true of everyone everywhere. They don't like people from somewhere else moving to their country in groups.
That's right.
But put a pin in that for a second. The interesting thing about what's going on in France is the people being targeted are Jewish, but they're not immigrants. These are people who just live in Paris, live in Toulouse, live wherever, and have since they were born there. And they've started fleeing en masse just to get out of there. And do you know the only thing the French racists have in common? The only thing they've been able to get together with those refugees and immigrants on?
Religion? No.
Anti-Semitism.
I don't understand it. I have a very difficult.
Well, see, it's the only thing they can get together on. And they've gotten together on it, and it's gotten really, really scary there. And the thing is, I said, nobody likes it when strangers show up, even if, we try to appeal to our own better nature and be like, yeah, I'm going to set those feelings aside and be welcoming. It's okay to acknowledge that everybody's freaked out by strangers. But the thing is, I think the reason we get blamed is there's two parts to it. But the first one is we're the people who have met everybody. If you ask somebody in Myanmar how they feel about African Americans, they'd probably be like, I don't fucking have an opinion.
Yeah, yeah.
And, if you ask somebody in Fiji, do they dislike Greeks? They'd be like, what are you talking about? We have been stateless, essentially, for thousands and thousands of years, most of the time. I mean, there's a minute here, a minute there, where we go, no, we live in Israel, and then it goes badly and everybody leaves. So we're the people everybody's met.
Yeah, because, for example, during the Holocaust, Jews escaped wherever they could get into. And so you ended up with a vibrant Jewish community in Singapore.
There was a vibrant Jewish community in Singapore before that because of the Silk Road. There are Jewish towns in China. There are Jewish towns in India. There are
Ethiopia.
We're the people everybody's met.
Yeah.
So we're the thing everybody can get behind getting against.
That's insanity.
Like racists in France and also the people they hate who are refugees can go, yeah, you don't like Jews? I don't like Jews. We can not like Jews together.
Well, there's this complete lack of historical memory. Well, historical memory in the human race. So if you look at the timeline right now, we're about roughly 80 years out from World War II, the Holocaust, the most recent, really well-known incident. There have been plenty since, but this is the pivotal point that people are aware of. And what we're talking about is a generation dying. And the younger generation has no memory, and it all comes back up again. And it's just a horrifying thing.
No. I wouldn't say no memory. I think one thing we do really well as a culture is not forget things. I mean, you could argue we never let anything go. But what I mean is I don't know anyone my age or younger who doesn't know all about the Holocaust.
But do they
and
fully
all
appreciate
about pogroms and all about the Spanish Inquisition? And I have always, I told Greg this years ago when I started freaking out about it, that I have always lived with the understanding that I'm an American, I was born here, this is my country, and things are good. But it might not always be, because they, meaning everyone else, can change their mind at any time and, will just turn on a dime and throw you out, kill you, whatever.
Yeah. When I was about 7, we'll discuss weird kids at another time, but when I was about 7, I first heard of Nazis through the book About the Sound of Music. The story of the Trapp family singers, Maria von Trapp, who wrote her autobiography and talked about the Nazis marching into Austria and into their town. And the count, was nobility from Austria, and he had no time for these rabble. He thought they were horrifying. And apparently he was a religious person who actually acted on what he espoused, and he refused to hang the Nazi flag, and they were targeted, and they really did have to flee. They romanticize it in the movie, but they really did have to flee because they had refused to bow to the Nazis, despite the fact that they had no family heritage that the Nazis would ordinarily have gone after. So that was my first introduction. I didn't know what a Nazi was. I envisioned some sort of monstrous thing. I didn't realize they were people, and perhaps I was more right then than not. But I have always always had a fear, a dread when the word is said, when the banner is flown, when the chants sign, all of that stuff hits me someplace visceral. I had a guest a while back who's an Orthodox Jewish rabbi who has done books on regressive hypnosis, where he brings people to former lives and they talk about their experiences during the Holocaust. And I guess it's a thing, I didn't know this, that there's a reincarnated community of people worldwide, my age, who apparently came from the Holocaust. And there are people all over the world, roughly my age, for whom this is a visceral thing because of past life connections. Now, take it with a block of salt. You don't need to believe it or disbelieve it. I think it's an interesting idea, interesting notion. And all I can say is I have always had an dread and a fear of Nazism and fascism. And it has only grown and grown and grown, which is why I started doing this channel specifically.
Well, everyone should have a fear of anti-Semitism because
Yes.
it presages fascism.
Yes, you're 100% correct. And to say, well, I'm not Jewish, so I'm not worried. Whether you believe this or not, we are all one. If one person is suffering, we all suffer. It doesn't matter what you are. We're human beings and we're all one. And we need to be horrified and absolutely resistant to this movement of
I'm sorry, I just had the funniest thought while you were talking, but you were saying something totally serious.
Oh, go ahead.
I just thought, because you said, we're all one, and if one person's suffering, I thought, if one person's a Nazi, does that mean we're all assholes?
Well, it's interesting. We've had debates here on this channel about compassion for people who we would judge to be evil or horrible or monsters or assholes. And what it always boils down to is we're not supposed to be judging. We're supposed to be, worrying about our own stuff. And it's appropriate to call out injustice, but it's not appropriate to then marginalize the monsters. I guess they're on their own path, and their path, as crooked and muddy as it is, it's for them to figure out. Just leave the rest of us out of it, leave the rest of us alone. And that's not what's happening. People are being targeted. And anti-Semitism is the topic of the moment, but there's a huge elevation in numbers of anti-Asian crimes because, of the rhetoric. And in fact, I just read, while I was getting ready for this, I just read about some stuff that I was not aware of, because there's this weird conflict in the topic, and I was trying to make sense of it. Fundamentalist Christians are very, very, very supportive pro-Israeli state. And you wonder what is that all about? Well, that's all about.
Did you find out? Because it's gross.
Yeah, it's the apocalypse. They're welcoming, the plains of Megiddo. They're looking forward to bringing about the second coming. And so they have to act out biblical prophecy. And part of that,
they believe the rapture won't happen until we all go back to Israel, refuse to convert. Oh no, wrong order. Go back to Israel, start a war at Armageddon, which is a mountain, which is where the word Armageddon comes from. And that war will bring about the end of the world. And then Jesus will reappear, presumably high five the evangelicals, offer us the opportunity to convert, which is hilarious because when he died, he was Jewish. And we'll all refuse, and we will all burn to death in hellfire, and then they will be raptured to heaven or something like that.
Yeah.
Craziest thing I've ever heard.
It's batshit is what it is. It's absolutely nuts, but there are people who believe this stuff. And I walk almost every day, and at the very, very, very top of the hill, there's a big, what I call the compound. It's a fundamentalist church with all kinds of outbuildings, and it's a cult. And
I was trying not to use the word cult, but you
Go
said
ahead.
people believe these things, and I was going to say,
It's not rational.
people believe I have access to a space laser. People believe I might be a lizard in a skin suit and eat babies. Just because they believe it and then they call it part of their religion
Doesn't make it true.
doesn't give them a pass on believing something like that.
I agree. I
You can't
100%
tack the word
agree.
religion on. That's a cult.
Well, in the before times, I used to drop in there on my walk to use the bathroom. Pit stop. And in the bathroom, they have loudspeakers like North Korea, where they would pipe in the sermon on a Sunday. It was only open on Sundays.
In the bathroom?
In the bathroom. So when you're sitting on the toilet, you're forced to listen to what they're preachifying. And more than once, it was about Middle Eastern politics and how to vote in relationship to that.
That's illegal. They violated the law and they committed tax fraud.
Well,
they're not allowed to preach.
I'm not a member.
They're not allowed to endorse.
I know that.
Or make any political statements in a church and then still claim tax exemption, which I'm sure they do.
I have a Catholic church 1 block away.
That was the most Jewish response I could have had to that story.
No, you're absolutely right.
They just committed tax fraud.
First thing that comes to mind. There you go. I have this Catholic church here a block away because I can't get away from them. And recently, they had all sorts of political signs stuck in the lawn outside the church door about abortion. And, it didn't say the word vote, but, it was quite apparent.
It would be hard to resist the urge to come back with a Sharpie and write on the sign, "You committed tax fraud and I'm calling the IRS."
You have no idea. You have no idea how difficult it was to walk past all of that. Yeah. I think it happens all the time. And I think everybody just turns a blind eye to it.
Yeah, that's a different conversation, but churches should not be tax exempt because they all do it.
That's right. I agree with you. I could debate that for hours. So 45, Trump, I think weaponized this belief to pander, to the fundamentalist vote. And then he came out and said terrible things about the American Jewish community and the way that they vote.
And that, like I said, we see fire before you smell smoke. That did happen recently, but it didn't start recently. He did that the entire time he was president. It was very scary.
Oh, he's done it throughout his existence in New York City.
Well, yeah, and he wouldn't rent to black people, and he's a terrible man. But I agree with you. He does these things. I agree with you. He believes these things or finds them convenient enough to espouse. But I don't agree that he's the source.
Oh, no. He's a tool.
He's a symptom.
Pragmatic tool, too.
He's a symptom. Because what I said about anti-Semitism presaging fascism, he's not the only one. This is not the only country that's suddenly blown up with anti-Semitism and is about to go fascist. It's happening all over the world. It's been happening for the last 10 to 20 years. It's just about to pop.
Yeah.
So it could have been him. It could have been some other jerk in his place. I think it was just like a bad weather system on its way.
He does these weird things. He gets up to make speeches in front of Republican groups that are Jewish Republican groups, which to me is just a contradiction in terms. But apparently 25% of American Jews voted for him.
Self-reported.
Well, yeah.
No, but it's an interesting point among Jewish people. It's a self-reported phenomena, first of all, whether or not you're Jewish. If I hadn't told you I was, would you know?
That you were Jewish?
Yeah.
No, you look like my Irish relatives.
Everybody says I look like where they're from. I have Persian friends who say I look Iranian. I have Indian friends who say I look Indian. I have I have a friend from Mexico who says I forget the name of the region. I look like I'm from some part of Mexico.
Yeah,
Everybody said
yeah.
wherever they're from, I look like them.
Yeah.
I just have one of those faces, I guess.
Yeah. Ecumenical.
But the point is, it's self-reported. And there are lots of Jewish people, like two of my 4 siblings, who would vehemently deny that they are Jewish because they're not religious.
I see. They're okay.
And
yeah, there is
that's
that
a
big
very,
debate.
very, very common phenomenon among American Jews.
Yeah, big debate about is
Much
it a
bigger
religion or a
percentage of
culture?
them than you would think are not religious, and therefore they insist they are not Jewish.
Yeah,
And I've always been like, come on, bro. When they show up with the yellow stars, they're not going to ask you if you believe in God.
that's
They
right.
don't care. It's racism. It's not ideological.
Yeah,
So there's that giant chunk of people who don't say they're Jewish because they don't think they are. And then there's people like me who, if they had to fill out a piece of paper, either check white or check other, because I'm not putting myself on a list of Jewish people. Isn't that crazy?
well, if
That's
it's any
always bad when
consolation,
you're asked for a list
I
of
always
Jewish people.
check other, because then on the space that's provided, I write it'll say race, and I always check other, and then I write human.
Well, I do it just because I've never been confused, and I think this is also very common among American Jews, that you should not volunteer that information on
Yeah.
paperwork.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not matter today, but you don't know if it'll matter next year or in a decade, or,
Yep.
It's like those people who checked the box for the Communist Party
Yeah.
in the 30s, and then it came
Yeah.
back to bite them in the ass in the 50s,
Yeah.
and they got thrown out of the country because they
They
like
had a
went to
crush on a
meeting once.
guy, and they went to a meeting with the guy because they thought he was hot, and they signed an entry.
Yeah, or
form
they thought,
walking in.
or they were like, this is like a union thing, right?
Right. Right.
And and then they're like, whoops, and I'm blacklisted and have to flee my own country now.
Well, I hate to tell you this, Asia, but you just blew your cover.
Well, yeah, but that's
You
because
already
it's
have.
so bad. I won't shut up about anti-Semitism. I just keep
I'll
telling people.
save you a seat in the gulag.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just, so when you say 25%, that's 25% of self-reported
Self-reported.
Jewish people, and I have a feeling that's a very small group.
And then there's that interesting subset of people, women, who will tell their husband that they voted that way, but there's privacy in that voting booth. Who knows what they really did, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the proof is in the exit polls, or not the exit polls, the votes.
The outcome.
Yeah,
the outcome.
Yeah. And actually, I just saw the other day that it was the opposite in Georgia. They didn't say they were going to vote Republican and then vote Democrat. They said they were going to vote Democrat and then they voted Republican.
Really? So just to intentionally throw people off?
No, I think at this point in time, if you're a woman saying you're going to vote in this election, with, I don't know when this is going to air, but the 2022 midterms were a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I don't think well, obviously, I think it was 25 or 30% of them, somewhere between there, said they would vote. Or I don't know what percentage said they would, but that percentage that actually voted Democrat in Georgia was like 25%. Far more than that said they were going to vote Democrat, because what woman looks at another woman right now after Roe has been overturned and goes, "Yeah, I think I'm going to vote for the Republicans. I like the tax cut."
I continue in my naivete to marvel that there are people who put those economic considerations ahead of human rights, democracy, voting, personal agency. What the hell? I don't understand it. I'm expecting you to explain it to me now. It's horrifying.
I guess they are ranking what they think is the greatest value to them and what they think is the most imminent danger to them. And their math has come out. It's good for me to vote for Republicans. I actually just had this conversation with someone. She insisted she said, white women just vote the same way as their husband. And I said, no, that's not, I don't think that's what they're doing. I think when they vote Republican, every election, after the election, the Democrats have this deep soul searching about white women as a voting bloc and why in every election 50% of them vote Republican. And I said, has it occurred to you 50% of them are Republicans? I mean, sometimes it's the most obvious answer. It's not you didn't do the right outreach. It's not, they're being confused or bullied by their husbands. They're just Republicans.
Well, you're right about the fact that psychologically there's a phenomenon where people who are in a vulnerable subset of the population will affiliate with what they consider power because they feel that they'll be protected under that umbrella.
Yeah.
So that explains a lot.
Well, and they also, might think they're voting in their own interest. If you're a married suburban white woman and you're voting for the Republicans, you're not voting the same way as your husband. You're voting for your husband's salary to go up. You're voting for his taxes to go down. You're voting for your home you own together to get more valuable. You're voting for your husband not to have to compete with other not white men, for your children not to have to compete with other people's children. You might think, this will make me wealthier, this will make me more secure, best, and the abortion thing is not good, but a woman of means can always get an abortion.
That's right.
So I think that's the math. I think that's the math those suburban white women did.
This gives me a pain like coronary artery
disease. It's a lack of empathy for people who aren't you.
Yes, that's my whole dilemma, trying to comprehend what's going on. I try to have faith in humankind, that there is a kernel of brotherly love, sisterly love, concern for the vulnerable, a desire to help those in need. I mean, these people call themselves Christian. Now, I'm not a Christian, but I'm fully aware that you're supposed to love one another, help those. I mean, the widow's mite, right? You give until it hurts. And in the Jewish faith, am I correct that when you give anonymously, because you're not supposed to tie ego into it?
Yeah, you're not supposed to tell people about charity. You're not supposed to, give donations with your name attached, or
like have the wing of the hospital with your name over it, right?
yeah, or even personally,
Yes.
like if somebody at your temple had their house burned down, you wouldn't offer them money. You would give it to the people in charge to give to them from the temple. It's just gross. There's something gross about transactional charity.
So what's the appropriate response is there a way to respond appropriately without putting your own neck on the line? I mean, when you speak out.
No, we passed that a few years ago. There is no appropriate way to respond to violent. I forget for a second that you can see me because I'm looking at you. You mentioned anti-Asian hate.
Yeah.
And one of my siblings is married to someone from Asia and has 2 children. And that makes me so nervous.
Double issue.
Just makes me so nervous because like I said, just walking down the street, people don't necessarily, I mean, I get weird racism everywhere I live because there's always somebody who doesn't like whatever group they think I belong to. It would be funny if it weren't so sad.
I know, you're right. That's terrible.
I've been told to go back to Mexico. When I lived in London, I got called a Paki, which is a slur for a Pakistani.
Yeah.
It's just like, and I don't even know how to respond. Part of me wants to be like, no, I'm not. but then I feel like that's not really solidarity with the person they were trying to insult. So I
Correct.
just, usually
Yeah.
tell them to fuck
Yeah.
off and not be such a
Yeah.
racist. Or if it's scary, I just go, I'm headed back to my own country. Goodbye. Like, but but ultimately with anti-Semitism, if I walk down the street, people don't necessarily know I'm Jewish. That is not true for my sibling's spouse and children.
Oh, right. It's undeniable, right?
Yeah.
That they have
It's
Asian.
very, very scary. If somebody hates Asian people, they can see that those are Asian people.
Yeah.
And you said, is there any correct way to respond without putting your neck on the line? And I think certainly for anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate, we passed the high water mark
Yeah.
on that a few years ago. And with racism against obviously Black people, it was decades, I don't know, centuries ago. There is no appropriate response that's just, I'm going to be a conscientious objector to racism and not do it, but also not do anything about it.
Well, we can't be the quiet, compliant, good German citizen who just keeps the head down and stays out of the fray. We can't do that. Let me tell you a terrible story. You're on the West Coast. I'm on the West Coast. Last year, I believe, perhaps 2 years ago, there was an incident in Portland, Oregon, where I guess they have a commuter train, and two young women got on high school girls got on this train, and one of them had some outward sign of Islam. I don't know if it was a hijab or what it was. So they get on the train, and these horrible racists start torturing them, really harassing them. And when you're a young girl and a man begins to harass you, there are layers of threat.
I was going to say, just for the record, I've never gotten on a train and not been harassed by a man. But that's trains. But go on.
Yeah. So 3 young men independently stood up and walked over to their defense and said, leave those young women alone. And they created a barrier with their bodies so that the young women could move to another car without being followed. And one of these guys pulled out a knife and stabbed all 3 of them, and 2 of them died.
That is a terrible ending to that story.
Well, but it's a great way to make a point that the time has come to have that kind of courage and commitment to your value system, because this cannot be allowed. We simply cannot allow it. And we tend to forget. Manzanar, we tend to forget that not so long ago we were rounding up our own citizens and putting them in camps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't think people talk about Japanese internment camps enough. That's a weird sentence to say. Like, we should all just talk about that more. But
agree.
Yeah, it's just shocking that they just rounded up American citizens and put them in concentration camps during World War II. And then we always say concentration camps like Nazis. But we were also doing that to our own citizens.
That's right. Yeah.
People also think, earlier you said that the Holocaust was like 80 years ago, and that's really recent. Yes, that part of it ended after it ended. But what most people don't realize is how deeply anti-Semitic America was at that point in history. It's why they wouldn't let Jewish refugees in during the war or before the war who were trying to flee that.
Turned boatloads away.
That was during the Holocaust, when they knew they were going back to death camps. Yes. And this wasn't, just some random policies. This was the greater will of the American people. They did not want us here.
Yeah.
From the turn of the century through World War II, they were like, keep those people out.
Every American community had a country club that didn't allow Jews.
Those still exist, actually. And
God.
But people don't realize that long after World War II, for decades, there were quotas. There were quotas at universities. You can't take more than 3 Jews or 5 Jews. And there were quotas on hiring them. And there were also just bans on hiring them and us, I don't know. But, it's not like oh, good, the Holocaust is over, and we made it to America. We're going to be fine now. They got here and found out they were not allowed in schools. They were not allowed in jobs. They were not allowed in neighborhoods. And so no, it didn't exactly end 80 years ago.
You're right. And with that also in mind, there was my mind just went blank. You said something that triggered a thought for me. Oh, I don't think most Americans are fully aware that immigration is not a process by which you decide, I think I'll move to the United States. The
No.
vast majority of countries in this world have lotteries for the very few slots allowed to emigrate from that particular country. There are people who try for the lottery every year for 20 years and they're luck, they don't get to come, which is one of the reasons why people will just come on a student visa or whatever and stay, because they have no alternative, and I don't think Americans fully appreciate the desperation and the withholding.
I think Americans know very little about immigration in general, and
Yes.
you can see that every time there's an election and either side says, if this doesn't go my way, I'm moving to Canada or Mexico. Like,
Yeah.
do you think Canada and Mexico don't have immigration laws? They don't want your ass.
You need to investigate that. I have. Let me tell you something. Most countries have requirements, financial requirements, age requirements, and professional requirements.
And then they still won't let you move there.
That's right.
I lived in London for a while, and I could not get a permanent visa, despite, it turned out ultimately, I had self-sufficient money. I was under 35, which is the age requirement in most places. It is there. I had no criminal record. I hit all their marks and then some. And I had a job offer from a company in London that was willing to say, she's the only person who can do this job. We need her.
So what did they tell you no for? Did they give you a reason?
Yeah. They said that wasn't good enough. That I was taking a spot a British person could have. That they absolutely did not believe that was a job no British person could do.
Oh.
They're allowed at their discretion to say that.
Huh.
And they usually won't if it's STEM, but in my case, it was in the arts. It was
Wow.
a design job with a prestigious jewelry firm.
I don't know what to say, because I am an immigrant, but I'm an immigrant in disguise. Nobody ever knows it. I don't look it. I don't sound it. I don't act it, because I was little, when we came here. And in appearance, I blend in with the crowd, right? I have heard the most egregious conversations amongst ordinary, fine, upstanding Christian Americans about immigration that would just curdle your blood. Unbelievable. And what my tactic is, go ahead and let people just dig their own graves. And then when they're done, I'll say, well, I'm an immigrant. And everything comes to a screeching halt. It's truly horrifying. These prejudices are pervasive. One of my sisters married a young man from Africa. And that was a whole thing. You can just imagine my Irish Catholic parents, and she did me a gigantic favor, because I'm always under the impression that I'm operating as a good person and I don't have preconceived notions and stereotypes and prejudices. And one day I was telling a joke, and this is a very long time ago. In my defense, I would never do this now, because thank God my sister set me straight. But this joke included, a variety of different ethnic types and nationalities all getting together, and the punchline was all these different stereotypes. And I thought, in my stupidity and ignorance, that if I included Irish Catholics in the mix, I was laughing at myself, so it was okay. And she stopped me. This is my younger sister. And she said, just think a second. Why don't you change the language a little bit? And instead of this, say woman. Now, how do you feel about it? And boom, the light went on. And I realized, oh my God, she is, yes. And I think it takes a moment of epiphany for a lot of us to be able to fully empathize or completely identify with what goes on for so many people. We don't even realize what it is we're contributing to and what we're doing. And I don't think it always, I'm not making excuses. I'm just observing it's not always malice, it's ignorance. And ignorance is a lack of enough information. You get people raised in patriarchal, theocratic backgrounds, families, where they're fed this stuff from the entire time they're children and as they grow up, and it's reinforced from people of authority they respect, like their pastor or whatever. It doesn't even occur to them that this might be wrong and that these are people that they're marginalizing.
You're a more generous person than me.
I'm trying to understand.
I grew up in police state America. I barely remember. I mean, I do remember it, but I was going to say a time before 9/11 and Homeland Security and all of that. I remember.
Yeah.
And for years, we were told the most outrageous things about Muslims. And they would always go, not all Muslims, but you know. And these were like teachers and
yes,
authority figures. And I never actually believed it. So you're more generous than I am. I don't think those people who think I have access to a space laser and eat babies have any good reason for believing
it. That's a whole other level of lunacy. You know?
Well, no, it's not actually.
You think that's more widespread?
The thing that I'm going to try out an idea on you.
Okay.
Because it's just something that I've been thinking about lately, since Kanye West went crazy. I mean, presumably he was always crazy, but he started talking.
See, I am of an age where I've never heard anything he's ever done.
He's really talented. He's just unfortunately, apparently, a racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic dickwad.
That's what I hear.
Yeah. But yeah, no, really talented designer, really talented musician. I have no beef with his work. It's his comments. People keep saying, because apparently he's bipolar and sometimes goes off his meds. Yeah. I guess people who like him or want to protect him keep saying, well, you know, this isn't his fault. He's off his medication. And other people, most people, have responded to that with, yeah, but a lot of people are bipolar and it doesn't immediately make them into raging, violent anti-Semites.
Racists. Yeah.
That's not a symptom of bipolar disorder.
Right.
Anti-Semitism is not a symptom of mental illness. You know, not being able to shut your mouth, not knowing what not to say that you think, that might be a symptom of being off your meds. That is the general consensus right now. But just hearing everyone say anti-Semitism is not a symptom of mental illness over and over made me think about it. Mm-hmm. And it is unique among varieties of racism and bigotry.
Yeah.
In that they don't have real reasons for hating us. Not that there are real, by real, I don't mean good, because there are no good reasons to hate anybody. But they don't have real reasons for hating us. Their reasons are always batshit. You know, like we secretly control the world, and
the whole blood libel.
We infected all of the dollar bills with COVID to give them COVID, and like
all these nonsense,
conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
and conspiracy theories are at their heart a form of paranoia, of like clinical paranoia. And so it's not like, most bigotries involve people you know, or at least people like it's like the English and the Scottish won't stop, or India and Pakistan. It has to be somebody close to home that you're familiar with. Like I said earlier, if you ask somebody in Myanmar, what do they think of African Americans? I don't think they even have an opinion. You can find anti-Semites everywhere in the world.
And what the point you're making is without a specific beef.
They have specific beefs and they're delusional. They're outlandishly delusional.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
they're lizard people. They eat children. They
yeah,
cause
yeah.
plagues. They have space lasers. And my thought, I'm just toying with this. I don't know if it's true or not. I wonder if anti-Semitism is not a symptom of bipolar disorder, but I wonder if anti-Semitism itself is a mental illness.
I think it's a spiritual illness. I think it's hate. It's hate and a lack of love.
All forms of hate, then, you could say,
Yes.
are spiritual illnesses.
Yes.
But I mean, just the fact that this isn't a form of bigotry where these people live in the next country over and you have all these grudges against each other, or they live in the same country as you and you're freaked out by them, or you don't want to compete with them, or whatever. That's where most bigotry comes from. Anti-Semitism is unique in that it is always based on just the most delusional, whacked out, conspiratorial thinking, which is fundamentally mentally ill.
Well, I'll tell you, I have said this before, and people I hope will bear with me repeating this, but this comes to mind all the time when the subject of prejudice, bigotry, stereotypes come up. We are, when you come down to it, animals. And there's a thing about animals that pervades, but it's especially prevalent in birds and especially in chickens. It's where we get the phrase pecking order. Chickens will not accept, usually, a new chicken into their flock if it's a different size, a different color, a different breed, just a stranger, smaller, whatever. They will peck it to death. And they have a hierarchy of the chickens that are somewhat okay. They'll peck at them occasionally, but there's always the best chicken, and it's not about alpha dogs. It's much more primal, more basic than that. They are sort of programmed to go after the different. So the more different the chicken is, the more likely it is it will not be assimilated into the flock. And I often wonder how much of that trait do we as humans carry somewhere in our DNA?
History would say as much as chickens.
Picking on people all the time. Pecking order. That's where that comes from. Isn't that weird? We have chickens.
It's disappointing, but totally believable.
We have chickens, and I've seen it happen. And
I was actually sitting here thinking about the fact that my niece during the pandemic got obsessed with chicks, and they turned into chickens. And she got all different kinds because we took her to pick them out. She was like, and I'll take one of those and one of those and one of those. And there is one that just looks like it's going to die all the time, and it's got no feathers. And then there's one that's kind of beat up, and I see it.
Yeah, they're different from each other.
They're very different. She got very different kinds, like she was picking out toys.
Well, people don't know.
No, she'd never had chickens before.
Yeah, people don't know. But how much are we really at our base instincts, our primal instincts about, and we're not even fully, we're not aware at all that that's what's in operation. I wonder sometimes. I don't know. I'm just throwing the question out there.
Well, it's all so weird that that's like all you can do. That's why I said, I don't know if that's true. It's just an idea I've been having lately. Maybe it's a mental illness, because that's not, I can't think of any other bigotry. People don't hate women because they think they're actually lizards in human suits, or that if you got them all to die, you could bring about the rapture, or like, they come up with more, not valid, but more possible, like could possibly have happened.
Well, women are classified as weaker, and women are, and it's all based on nonsense. I had this discussion with somebody really close to me who took offense that what's it called, affirmative action. They were hiring women into this particular job over men who were equally qualified, trying to balance things out, make up for the past. But also, the argument that I was presented with against this was that women don't have enough upper body strength. And I said, now, wait a minute, you are placing masculine values at the forefront. And
was this a job that required upper body strength?
Firefighting. Some women would not have.
I was going to say, well, if you have it, you have it. If you don't, you don't.
You don't.
I'm not tall enough to be a supermodel, but that doesn't mean nobody is.
But they prioritize masculine traits. I said the reality is that you're putting more value on masculine traits so that you can exclude women. The women are much better organized and have more of an attention to detail. They've done studies where they put individuals in a room with a long counter, like a makeup counter in a dressing room, and there's a big mirror all along the length of the counter. They don't know they're being watched through the mirror, and there's just junk they think they're there for a job interview. They're not. They're part of a study. And there's junk all over the counter, and they leave them there for a prescribed amount of time. And then they come in and say, okay, we're ready for you. They take them into another room and they explain, it's not a job. We're going to pay you for your time, but we want to ask you a couple of questions. Can you list what you saw on the counter? The men couldn't. The women went through the whole entire list. There was this, there was this, there was this. Women have a better attention to detail. They're more aware of what's going on around them. They're able also to multitask better than men's brains can multitask. Now, we're generalizing. True for a large number, not true for everybody. There's always the guy who's going to be a great multitasker, the woman who's going to be strong in her upper body.
Sure.
But in general,
my point was just somebody could say that they hate you because you're the weaker sex. And
right.
That's not true, but it could be. I mean, these are things that are within the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Not, I hate you because you have a space laser. I hate you because you're a member of the Illuminati. I hate you because you control all the banks in the world and you're the reason I didn't get a car loan. It's
well, if you control all the banks in the loan, we have to have a conversation off camera about, can I borrow $20? But, yeah, it's lunacy.
My friend's dad has been saying that at least since she and I were in college, that he's still waiting for his stipend, his check every month from the International Jewish Conspiracy, and it just never shows up.
That's great.
Yeah.
Insanity.
No, but it's just, that's what I meant by these are not real reasons. I mean, they're not even feasible. They're not something a sane person would be persuaded to believe about anyone.
Well,
it's nuts.
It's a fine line between mental illness and brainwashing from cult membership. It's a fine line, and I think it might be hard to distinguish. Yeah. And here's what really frightens me. So I haven't talked at all yet about the election because the results are not completely in, but I'll say this much. I'm horrified personally that, like, Texas, what the hell? Abbott won in Texas. Ken Paxton has been running around under indictment for any number of crimes for years, and he's still in office. What is going on with our values?
What happened in Georgia?
Well,
how was that a legitimate 50-50 split between a successful, beloved senator and a guy who talks in word salad and held a gun to his wife's head?
I don't know. That's my point, is what is this a reflection of? How deep-seated is this brainwashing, this crazy?
Well, I mean,
I don't know what to call it.
We're almost at an hour, but it goes right back to the beginning of the conversation when I said everybody should be worried about it because these upticks in anti-Semitism always precede surges in fascism.
Yes.
a big part of fascism is deliberately mindless tribalism. You have to
Yes.
agree, I belong to this group, and anything they do is fine, and I will
Yes.
do it with them.
Yes. Yes. The white Christian nationalists, the what are they called? Well, the nationalists, the people who marginalize everybody else and identify.
Christo-fascists.
Yeah, yeah. I find them absolutely terrifying, and I guess the conclusion is that we're going to have to stiffen our spines and stand up for what's right. And I know that not everybody would agree with this, but I believe that it's a moral imperative, and it's a symptom of our falling away from the truth of why we're here and what we owe each other as fellow human beings. The fact that so many Americans could vote the way they did, whatever the outcome, just the numbers shock me.
It's gross, but I can't remember an election in my lifetime where there weren't tens of millions of people voting for something that I thought was gross. And I try to remind myself that they feel the same way about me. And the whole point of being American is we can agree to disagree. And you can not like my values, and I can not like your values. And the important part is that the government doesn't get to tell us what our values are. The problem with Christo-fascists is they want the government to be able to tell us what our values
That's
are.
right. That's right.
And I can say in this election, I was surprised and delighted, relieved by the fact that all of the election deniers, I think Carrie Lake's results aren't confirmed yet, but all of the intense election deniers who were trying to be governors, who were trying to be in state legislators,
Secretaries of state, yeah.
the ones who came like right out and said, I promise we'll never seat a Democrat in this state again.
Yeah.
Those people all lost.
Yeah.
Easily. They
Yeah.
lost. People
Yeah.
would not vote for them. Even people who still voted Republican would not vote for them.
Yeah, that is heartening. It is.
It's heartening because, my original point is everybody pay attention. We're sliding rapidly into fascism. Those people were not an accident. They were trial balloons. They were, how much fascism will you vote for?
Right.
If we come right out and say that fascists, will you still vote for us? Because what most people don't understand unless they have read a lot of history is that fascism is almost always ushered in voluntarily. People voted for Hitler. They elected him, and then he wouldn't leave. It's always a popular movement. And if you say no before it's too late, they can't do it. They don't have any power. They have the power you give them, and then they beat you to death with it. So I found it very upsetting and disturbing when I saw all of those candidates that were clearly fascist trial balloons. Will you guys give this the green light? Is this cool? Like, how far can we push this? And I found it incredibly reassuring that they all lost.
Well, do you know Danielle Moody?
No.
Well, Danielle Moody has a couple of podcasts. She's she's been involved in politics for a long time, I think from lobbying and political action. She came on and talked with me a while ago, and she's like I told her, she's just the trifecta. She's African American, she's gay, and she's a woman. And so they have multiple reasons to go after her, and she has a real deep-seated sense of threat growing, and I that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you. Are you sensing that as well?
Yes, I've been, that's what I said, I've been telling Greg this for 3-4 years now. Yes,
that's what I wanted to hear from you, and that's because it confirms what I feel. I may not be on the receiving end of the personal threat yet, but I'm under no delusions about that. And I hope people wake up and realize that we are more responsible for each other than not. that we owe each other protection and care, and we can't turn a blind eye just because it's not us today.
It would be nice if people felt that way, but I'll settle for everybody remembering that poem about first they came for these people, then they came for these people, then they came,
That's right.
and then there was when they came for me, there was no one left.
Nobody to protect me and speak up for me. It's time to speak up, and I'm hoping that more people will. I think it's happening, not enough. I want to see it much more vocally. That there's a great documentary right now, probably Netflix, I don't remember, about the Tree of Life synagogue shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of important discussion in that documentary that I strongly recommend people watch it.
Did you see the Ken Burns documentary last month that came out? It's 3
No,
parts.
I don't get. He was on PBS, wasn't he? Yeah, I
So
don't
good.
get PBS. I'm waiting for it to come somewhere free.
Well, I suggest everybody see it, because it, apart from being like a giant Ken Burns documentary, which is always worth the price of admission, it was incredibly informative and interesting to someone who already knows a lot about that. So it'll blow your mind.
So it was about the Holocaust.
Not entirely. It was about America and the Holocaust.
So the whole American fascist movement during the war.
Whole American fascist
America
movement.
First, remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charles Lindbergh, who
Oh,
was a Nazi,
yes, Charles Lindbergh was a huge Nazi, and the only
wanted to
reason
run for
why-
president.
Yeah, the only reason he didn't move to Germany was because the war had already broken out, and his wife was afraid because of the actual shooting and bombing that was going on. But they fled to Europe, and he was a big fan of Hitler. Queen
And
Elizabeth,
a lot of people wanted him to be president.
Yeah, Queen Elizabeth's uncle, who abdicated the throne, Edward, the one who married the divorcee.
Yeah.
He and his wife lived in a chateau in the outskirts of Paris with their own personal SS guard throughout the war. Not a well-known fact.
I'm not going to get any fans for saying this, but the Windsor family is German, not English. They changed their name to Windsor a couple generations ago.
Yep.
Because they thought their name sounded too German to be appealing to the British people. They are German, and a lot of them in the lead up to World War II were at minimum very sympathetic to Hitler's ideas.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I did a post official funeral video on monarchy in general, and that monarchy specifically. Winning no friends, I might add.
I know people don't want to hear it, but facts are facts, folks.
The word monarchy means one leader, and it's antithetical to we the people. It's the absolute opposite of what we stand for.
Yeah, I mean, it's also I've never been down with the idea of monarchy because it takes the worst parts of authoritarianism and then mixes them with the worst parts of religion. The idea that this person is anointed by God and therefore...
Don't forget eugenics.
Well, you're not a subject. I learned that when I lived in England. Or you're not a citizen. You're a
subject, yes.
And I never thought about it before. I'd heard the phrase.
Yeah.
But when I thought about it, I was like...
How's that for terminology? Brainwashing.
Like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I am an American citizen. I'm not anyone's subject.
Much as I love my family in Ireland, I've had some very interesting conversations that I've had to gracefully kind of maneuver out of, because at a very fundamental level, they're more than happy to hand over a lot of decision making and very conventional, very traditional attitudes about the role of government and the role of people. I sounded like a flaming radical, and I was just being my ordinary self. So I had to kind of ease out of it. It's best not to get into those sorts of really fundamental debates with family you're staying in their guest room. But yeah, I think we appreciate what we have, and we need to speak up for it, and it's time to not tolerate. Jews will not replace us. That people on CNN covering the Charlottesville rally, the what is it? Protect the right, support the right. I can't remember.
Do you remember they were chanting that, and then people on the right
said, "You will not replace us," right?
I remember that, and I found that baffling, but also offensive. I was like, why is that better? Who do you think you is? They're wearing swastika armbands. I know who they're talking to, and so do you, so don't pretend you don't, because it's not you.
Yeah, but the very fact that they would report it incorrectly is astounding. Absolutely astounding. But oh well.
Like, unless you're going to blur out all those swastikas and torches, it's not going to work. We all know a Nazi rally when we see one.
Every bit as much signals, triggers, as they are just tools, or they are intentionally chosen to trigger something in people because we respond to it because we've seen it before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Aja, now I'm all riled up. Thanks.
Well, good. Then my work is done.
Your job is done. So it's really nice to see you. I'm so glad you're well. And
you too.
You have an announcement.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I made a documentary with a director named Jason Cohen. It's called Nothing Lasts Forever. It's about the diamond industry. And yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good. And the premiere's in a couple days, and then it'll be in theaters for a few weeks, 4, 6, 8, I don't know. But sometime right after the new year, it will be streaming on Showtime.
Showtime. So let me ask you, where is it going to be premiered?
In Los Angeles.
Where?
Oh, well, it's already been premiered, shown at the places where you introduce those things. The Berlinale and South by Southwest, and
right,
and film festivals. But this is like the big premiere,
the big theater. Yeah,
I should know this because they sent me my itinerary.
Yeah. You'll be posing for pictures at this time, and you'll be shaped up. Cool. So here's the all-important question: who are you wearing?
Ooh, haven't decided yet. That's a good question.
You have to send me a picture.
Okay.
I bet you'll be beautiful. Well, more so than at the moment. You'll be stunning.
A little chubby at the moment. I was about to say I have a Herb Leger lavender evening gown I like, but might be a little chubby for that.
Oh, well.
We're going into the holidays. I'm wearing.
It's hibernation time. That's
That'll
save your life in the long run. You know?
I'm not bikini or bandage dress ready, so maybe a different dress than that.
Oh well, look at it this way. Some of us have never been.
You know, my friend Claire, smartest person I knew growing up, always said, "You put on a bikini, you have a bikini body. It's a body in a bikini."
Good for her. Yeah, good for her.
And so I'll put pictures on Instagram.
You have to email me a picture. I don't do Instagram.
You don't? Oh, okay. I'll email you one.
Because you know what would happen? I'd be in the thick of it 24/7.
You get in trouble like you did with
YouTube. Yeah. And I don't think it's an appropriate forum for me to really. I like to get really into things deeply, and it just doesn't lend itself to that. And I say something, I'd be in trouble immediately. So no, I don't do any of that. Plus, I'm old enough where I can't look at a screen constantly. It just doesn't. Somebody tried to send me an ebook, a good friend of mine, to maybe do here, you know, and I told her, oh my God, I can't read an ebook. You must be joking. So
no, I mean, it's not good for your eyes.
No,
I don't love ebooks.
Yeah.
I look at screens enough of the time that if I'm going to read a book.
Yeah. We have to interact more with people. But there is the benefit of being able to do something like this. And I am so appreciative of you. I know that you're really busy right now. I had no idea until we spoke earlier that you're being, feted for your documentary. That's so wonderful.
No, it's going to be really fun. And I'm excited about it. And I'm excited for people to see it. There's actually a great preview that like a movie preview that you see the movie
trailer,
trailer that Showtime did. And if you Google Showtime and Nothing Lasts Forever, you'll find the trailer.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm really looking
I'm
forward
pretty
to
sure
it.
it's
And
on
not to
YouTube at this
forget
point.
your book Stoned, and then this book, which it's a great book. And I truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And it was really fun to talk to you again. And thank you for being open about a topic that can be sensitive, you know?
Yeah, I understand. There are so many aspects of it where even being a Jewish person, I still, when you
Yeah.
hear people talking about it and you're like, oh, I'm going to avoid that like a landmine.
Yeah.
See us later.
Yeah.
But like you said, time has come.
Yeah, we got to take the blinders off. We have to shine the light on these things, and we have to speak out. So I think that's enough metaphors / idioms for one conversation.
All right, I have to run.
Yes,
But it
thank
was
you
great seeing
so
you.
much.
My
And,
pleasure.
thank you, everybody, for watching Slán go Fóill and Sláinte.